The Worst Day to Get My Heart Broken Part 2. To say I was embarrassed would be an understatement. I felt like pulling the covers over my head and staying there forever. I'm so sorry. I tend to talk in my sleep and move around. I smiled sheepishly. He was still looking at me without saying a word, and with each moment that passed, I became more mortified. And then he burst out laughing. I was puzzled, wondering what was so funny to him. At least you did not kick me in your sleep. My brother used to do that when we were younger. It was a war every night, he said after he had stopped choking with laughter. I like seeing him happy. He made it seem so effortless. Eventually, the embarrassment subsided, so I did not feel bad anymore. Want to help me make breakfast? It is nothing much, just some canned stuff and non-perishables. We had to throw out some stuff that turned bad, he said as he got out of bed. Sure, I wouldn't mind. I feel so much better today, and I would like to do something other than stay in this bed all day. I smiled as I got out of bed. We helped each other to tidy the room while making small talk before going to make our food. Do you think Alex is still asleep? I asked. She's probably meditating. Pass me the can opener, please, he said. We made a decent breakfast with dry bread and baked beans, and Alex joined us a few minutes later. She told us that she was going to be outside for the rest of the day to see if there were any more improvements in the weather. So then she left and it was just the two of us. You know, I never take a break from work. It's funny that the first time I do this year, I got stuck here. I laughed. There was this one time we got stuck in a cave on a trip. I was afraid of the dark, so you can imagine how I was feeling, he said. Tell me more. How did you get to be stuck in a cave? I asked. My brother Warren and I were in college, and we decided that we wanted to go on an adventurous trip. Our parents were always big on the outdoors when we were growing up, but it was also our first trip without them. Long story short, we didn't see the warning sign that some caves are prone to collapsing. My brother insisted on entering the cave even though I did not like caves very much. In the end, the mouth of the cave collapsed, but luckily, we were not alone. My brother's girlfriend got help for us, and that was the last time I let him drag me into a cave. He laughed. Wow, you're definitely very adventurous. Your brother sounds very daring. I never had any siblings growing up. I would have liked to have an older brother, I said. It is both hell and a blessing. The sibling rivalry never ends, but I learned a lot from him, he said. I could never imagine you engaged in a sibling rivalry. You seem so peaceful, I laughed. He smirked and leaned in close to me. There was a very naughty glint in his eyes, which I could not help getting excited about. Who was this man? Who could be quite the sweetheart? Yet he looked at me as if he was the opposite. I used to be quite the wild child, he whispered darkly. I could not help losing my train of thought a little bit when he said something like that. My mind could not help wondering what he had lived through and what stories he had to tell. How wild were you? I asked. Oh, the stories I could tell you. He smirked. I want to hear each and every one, I said. And so he told me the stories of his wild youth, the mistakes he made, and the lessons he learned. Maybe I was a nosy person, but I enjoyed hearing people's stories. It was one of the easiest ways to get to know someone. It was surprising what you can learn about someone from a very simple story. Hours seemed to pass as he talked and I listened. I could visualize everything. It was so vivid. We laughed at the funny antics he used to get up to. Now, you have to tell me your stories, he said. Tonight. Look, Alex is back, I said as I saw her coming in through the door. She looked less somber than when she left, meaning there might have been some good news? So, the road is being unblocked tomorrow, she beamed. Gerard and I pretty much screamed when she said that. I cannot wait to eat something that is not canned, he sighed. Same here, bro. I gave him a high five. How are you feeling though, Jean? She asked me. I realized then that the unblocking of the road meant that I could leave soon. Is it crazy to say that I had gotten used to staying there? For the first time, I had relaxed and been forced to experience life without the distraction of technology. Then there was Gerard, who I had connected with in a way that I had never done before, with anyone. There had been something there, however little, but the fairy tale was over and I was going to have to return to my life before him. A life that suddenly seemed dull and bleak. It was probably best for me to leave before I got attached and hurt. I feel great. Thank you both for saving my life. If the road is unblocked tomorrow, then I think I'm going to go home, I said. You can stay here for a few more days to make sure that you're 100% okay, she said. It is fine. I have to get back to work anyways. I cannot miss any more days, I said. Be sure to visit us sometime soon, she grinned. That night, Alex went to bed early and I was left with Gerard. He reminded me that I had promised to tell him my stories during the day. I liked that he wanted to hear what I had to say. Most of the time, I was the listener while everyone else talked about themselves. No one ever asked me about my past. It was a bit strange to start telling him about my family, school, first love, and first heartbreak. But I grew very comfortable around him as time went on. At some point, I ended up with him lying on my lap as he listened to me speak. I am much more boring compared to you. No midnight escapades or sneaking out to rock shows. I chuckled. He sat up and looked at me. You are not boring. There is so much to you, but do you ever let everyone see? He asked. I must admit that question hit me hard. I had not expected him to call me out like that. What makes you say that? I asked. You can tell so much about someone depending on their stories. He repeated what I had said to him sometime in the afternoon. Using my words against me? I laughed. He was dead serious though, and he looked at me. I had been feeling on the edge since that morning, thinking about what had happened during that night. As the day progressed, I focused a bit more on him, on his freckles, how his hand felt when it brushed mine, and much more. I leaned in close to him, closing the gap between us in seconds. The instant our lips connected, it was confirmed that I was indeed attracted to him. As if he had been expecting it, he immediately started caressing my hair while kissing me. It was slow and gentle while making me feel so much. We pulled apart and looked at each other for a second. Then he kissed me more passionately than ever before. I fell onto the couch and he followed me. He trailed kisses from my cheek, down to my neck, and finally onto my collarbone. I started to unbutton his shirt, but then I looked into his eyes. What we were doing hit me then, along with the memory of Max and Gillian. He withdrew from me, settling beside me. You're not ready, he said. What do you mean? I am. I started explaining, but my words failed me. It's still fresh on your mind. Please do not beat yourself up about it. He smiled. I nodded and there was an awkward silence. I'm feeling sleepy. Are you coming with me? He broke the silence. Yes, I said as I followed him. Things between us settled back to normal as we talked before bed, which I was glad about. Maybe in another time, another place, we would have been. The next morning, Alex and Gerard drove me back to the lodge. After some quick goodbyes, I left. I was a bit sad to leave the place, even though I had nearly lost my life there. At least I had met good people. When I got home, I set up an old phone that I was no longer using. There were many messages from work, friends, and family asking why I had gone AWOL. No one could get a hold of Max and Gillian, who most people knew I had gone with. I reassured everyone that I was fine. I had just fallen ill and had to stay behind due to the bad weather. I was a bit tired from the journey, so I thought of sleeping, but my mind was working overtime. It stung that those two had not even tried to go after me when I left, and nor did they think to check if I was okay when I came back. But it did not matter. I now knew what their true colors were, so now I could move on with my life. I had not gotten Gerard's contact details, because there had been a lot on my mind, but I wished that I did, because I could have used his support at that time. As the weeks went on, I got back to my normal life, taking it step by step. I got rid of any reminders of them and focused on work. But at night, I would feel so lonely. I would think of Gerard and how it had felt when we kissed after we connected. I regretted not trying harder to make things work for us. I did not want to live my life scared of doing what I wanted. If I had learned anything from him, it was to be brave. One night, I googled the contact details of the lodge. I got through to Alex's husband, who told me that Gerard was no longer there. He had only been a part-time employee. Just as I was starting to feel dejected, he gave me an address and a telephone number. I called the number and it turned out to be his brother, who let me know that he was actually staying with him. I asked to speak to him. "Hey, stranger," he said. His voice brought back so much that I had kept hidden for a while. I instantly missed him at that point. "You're a difficult man to find," I said. "It helps to be mysterious. Who wants to be boring?" "I'm surprised that you contacted me though. Am I that difficult to forget?" I could hear the humor in his voice. It amused me. "Maybe you are. This might be random, but do you want to meet up for a coffee sometime?" I asked. "I would love to. Where are you from? I never asked you," he said. "We are actually in the same city. I saw the address I was given at the lodge. It is a wonder we have never met. Also, I had no idea that you were not a full-time employee there." "I will tell you all about it soon though. Good night, Jean," he said. I could not help beaming with joy when I got off the phone. It had been so long since someone excited me like that. The feeling of giddiness was nerve-wracking. I got a text a few minutes later. Unknown. We never did discuss the location and time. It was him! We arranged a time and a place to meet. Then we said goodnight but kept on talking. It became very clear that neither of us wanted to end the conversation, which led to us talking the whole night. We never ran out of things to talk about even once. It was sad when we finally had to fall asleep. A few days later, we met at a cafe. Seeing him for the first time since the lodge was exciting. In fact, he looked even more attractive than he did back then. And even then, he had been good looking. He gave me a hug that warmed me up immediately. "I missed you," he admitted as soon as we sat down. When I was around him, my body sometimes moved on its own accord, i.e. the sleeping incident. I took his hand in mine and squeezed it. "I'm so glad I found you again. I regretted not getting your contact details," I said. "Don't worry too much. At least now you found me. You were going through a lot at that time. How have you been, emotionally?" he asked me. "Well, I have been taking it easy. It will take me a while to heal, but I think I'm ready to move on with my life now." "You mean..." "I really like you, and I have not stopped thinking about you ever since I left. I was still raw then and unsure of my feelings, but now I'm going to be honest with you. I want to get to know you." I looked down. "I want to get to know you too. There is something there. I do not want to lie." He squeezed my hand. There was a lot of chemistry between us during the meal. We were laughing, flirting, and having fun. He had a way of making me forget the world and just see him. Afterward, we promised to meet again, but this time, he wanted me to join him at a music gig. I agreed, of course, and we went there together. We went out several times as the week passed, enjoying each other's company. I feared that it would fizzle out now that we were not at the lodge anymore. But the opposite happened. Our connection deepened as we integrated ourselves into each other's lives. I eventually got to meet his brother, who I immediately took a liking to. It was after dinner with his brother and him that I decided that I wanted to make it official. I enjoyed the slow progress we had been making, but I wanted us to be official. He was who I wanted, and I did not have any doubts anymore. He had done nothing but bring positivity and happiness into my life. My mother and father already knew about us, as I like to keep them up to date with my life. When my father recovered, they were going to come and visit me. I hoped that by that time, we would be a couple. I was a bit nervous when we went to his room after dinner. Every time he looked at me, a sharp feeling of happiness just went into me. I never thought that I would give love a chance again, after my disappointment of an ex-boyfriend. But he had changed it all. "Can I ask you something?" We were sitting cross-legged, looking at each other. "Yes, you may," he said, taking my hand in his. "I do not want to seem like I am rushing you. If you're not ready yet, it's okay," I began. "Everything with you feels right. If you already want to get married, we can arrange something," he teased, lightening the mood. When was he ever serious? "You're so silly. Do you want to be my boyfriend? We can talk about marriage later," I chuckled. I did not feel like I was going to pass out anymore. Unfortunately, I have a habit of being nervous, even though there's no reason to be. "Yes, but on one condition," he smirked mischievously. I had no idea how I thought that was innocent when we first met, but now I was seeing that he had a hint of naughtiness. I loved it. "Anything," I said as I brought my lips closer to him. He chuckled and then he started to tickle me. I could not stop laughing. He was too strong for me. After a while, he had mercy on me and he stopped. He was on top of me and I was still letting out loose giggles. Do not ever stop smiling. I love it when you do," he said as he brought his lips onto mine. I felt pure euphoria as my boyfriend kissed me. Our bodies moved in sync, and soon both of us were naked. My heart was beating so fast due to excitement and needing him at the same time. "I need you," I whispered as his hands slowly trailed up and down my abdomen. "And you will have me, my love," he whispered back. Those words increased the desire that was coursing through me until I feared I would burst. I loved him, and I trusted him. I was willing to give it a shot. He made sweet love to me, which left the both of us breathless. I was glad that we had waited. That moment felt much more special. "I love you," I said. "I love you too." The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.